This is not one of my typical how to paint videos, but an informative let's show you what happens when I experiment with paint videos. So we are going to have some fun and just show the footage whilst I describe what's happening, the techniques used, and let's see if you can figure out what paint range I am using before I announce it. There will also be some extra tips towards the end of the video, so keep watching until the end. Let's begin. The Storm Drake from Games Workshop's Age of Sigmar range had an initial colour of blue put down on all of the body and the wings, and a second layer was added to create a subtle shade. The wings underneath were given a heavy blast from the airbrush, and this made the paint act a bit like a wash as it flowed into the cracks of the sculpt. For the top of the wings, I wanted them lighter, so I tried the white paint from the range, and it was okay. Could be better, but it made a subtle difference nonetheless. So to finish them off, I used my trusty makeup brush and blended a lighter colour onto them, and this allowed me to create a nice gradient on the wing pretty quickly. Dragon number 2. This little chap had an initial bone colour applied to it, but this time we are going darker from this point, unlike our blue friend earlier. Using a skin tone paint, the wings were then given some definition by running the airbrush around the edges of the flesh to create a darker shade. And just for funsies, the bottom of the wing underneath had the same colour applied. This will be the start of our gradient for this beast. A second darker brown colour was then applied to the same areas as before. However, we did not totally want to cover up the step that we achieved previously. So these paints work really well when starting from a light colour and going through to a darker tone. A similar process was done with the green areas for the dragon's body, but it was used as a slight wash from what we learnt from the previous miniature. This defines the monster's features, and we make use of the sculpted scales at the same time. Now that I have experimented and found that the paints work best from a light colour towards a darker one, I had some fun doing the wings on this red dragon. As we all know, red goes faster, something to do with wavelengths, but just ask an orc if you need a full explanation. For the shading of these wings, some red was mixed with black to make a nice maroon colour and applied into the recesses, as well as forming a quick pattern going across the wing. The paint acts like a type of filter. You can see the initial colour of the red still present as we apply a further layer on top of it. The more layers painted on, then the colour luminosity goes darker, which gives you a decent amount of control when applying shaded areas to a miniature. Usually I run the air compressor between 20 to 25 psi. However, for my next trick, we are cranking this up to 40, as I want the paint to come out with more force. A cream colour was chosen for the wings as an initial base coat, but this was also applied onto the overlapping red, which was left intentionally for this experiment. Now, I know from experience that using these paints with a brush normally allows us to reactivate the layer underneath, and this is exactly what I was going for here. Notice the cream and red reactivating and merging together. We can now speed dry this with a hairdryer, and this lets us create a cool, simple blend in a matter of seconds. And with that, I'm sure that most of you will know which paints I'm talking about now in this video, and they are one of my favourite paint ranges, Army Painter Speed Paints. They are not just for brushing with, and they can give you some really nice and fairly quick results for your miniature painting. Compared to actual airbrush paints, I find the colours just come out more vibrant looking than that of the 𝗍𝗏 counterpart, which makes me want to restart this gentleman right here. If you would like to see any of these dragons as a full-length video, then please do let me know in the comments below. Now we have established what paints they are, we can move on to a few more practical uses. But before that, I would like to say a big thank you to all of my patrons for your support. It helps support me in my goal to make even more videos just like this to help you guys get your miniatures painted. If you would like to see what it's all about and check out our monthly community challenges, then check out the link in the description below. Okie dokie, so using a couple scrap miniatures as test models, they were sprayed gunmetal and then a layer of plate mail metal was then used to brighten up that shine. We will see why in a moment. The speed paint only needs a couple of drops and then it was thinned down with some Tamiya acrylic paint thinner. This made it both more translucent and it will give us more coverage as we paint. I will leave a list of items and corresponding links in the description just in case you want to pick any bits up for yourself. This 𝗬𝗏𝗃 was intended to have a dirty armoured look, so a light coat of brown was applied over the miniature. To speed up the drying time, a hairdryer was used, but if you had say 20 of them, then the first one should be dry by the time you finish painting your batch. Another nifty little trick is to make a wash out of the paints, and to do this I added a lot more paint thinner than before. The miniature was sprayed from a lower angle so that the paint will not only run into the recesses of the model, but create a darker shade on the bottom areas of the sculpt. This method has come out pretty good. You can really tell on the chainmail and between each of the armor plates. And this will save me a lot of time for army painting 𝗬𝗏𝗃. Another way to mix up the paints is to use the airbrush itself. Just add the paint and the thinner into the cap and place your finger on the end to block the exit. Lightly pull back the trigger and it will blow the air back into the chamber and mix the liquid up. Don't press back too much as you don't want the paint to run all the way back through the airbrush. The second model was given a light tint of blue for the armor, but once worked on it can give your armor troops that little bit more interest, and just like these. The speed paint reacts with water slightly, and we will take advantage of this right now. Remember when we painted the miniatures that brighter silver? Well, using a slight damp brush, we can lift off the speed paint from the armor to basically create a quick highlighted look and bring back that silver. It's just like dry brushing and using a chipping mask fluid all in one go. You can even use a really banged up brush to create little scratches and scrapes on the armor. This is one technique that I was really looking forward to showing you. If you don't have time to highlight every single miniature, then this is a great option to save buckets of time. You can go as far as you want with this chipping effect, and you can also just paint on a few highlights anyway, to bring the edges of the armor out further. It's a win-win. Now I'm looking forward to recreating the green armor on some Kings of War miniatures this year. And as always, thanks for watching and keep on hobbying.